Thank you. Was that fabulous or what? Molly Hammer, thank you. Oh, I loved that song when she first brought it up and suggested it, and I only heard it on an MP3. You bring so much life and grace to it, so much. It's gorgeous. So, good morning. I am Kathleen Marie, and this morning we're going to do things a little bit different. Reverend Aaron is not here. There's some things that we've been wanting to say and to share, and so we're going to do that in a little bit different format. So more than being a speaker, I'm going to be your cruise director is what comes to mind, your MC. Okay. So I want to talk about service. It's not a subject that we always want to talk about or to hear about, but when we connect that with the truest part of our being, it becomes the most profound, expansive way of life that we can choose, and we do choose that. It is a choice. Sometimes we know we're making that choice, and sometimes we don't, but it is. I was one time in downtown Sacramento walking. I was running a nonprofit at the time, and we were really experiencing some financial questions, we'll say. So a woman I work with, she and I went out to take a walk. And I was just into, I don't know how we're going to do this, and the county wants us to do that, and the city wants us to do that. And she's walking along just as calmly as she could, speaking to everyone that she sees. Hello, good morning, how are you? Sort of oblivious to what I'm saying, right? But that energy came to me. I mean, I caught that energy from her. And so we walked along, and my tone started changing, she told me later, and it did, and that was good, and that was necessary. I didn't need to be all into the worrying and the budget and all of those things. So we said, good morning, hello, how you doing today? And people were responding to that, and that was all very, very nice. There was one particular young man that we passed who was young. I don't know, maybe, well, I'm not going to say an age. He was younger than me. And very handsome, beautiful face, and eyes full of pain. He did not acknowledge us. He didn't really, he watched us go by, but he didn't say a word, not a word. The next day, I was out walking by myself, and he was there, same place. I'm assuming that he didn't have a home. This is where he was in the afternoons. Hi, how you doing? And he just smiled, Later that day, my coworker came in and said, do you remember that one fellow, that really cute guy that was, that was right up in front of the restaurant? Yeah, I do. I said, I saw him this morning. Really, it's not all we did was take walks, but that's all I'm going to talk to you about. He said good morning to me. Yes, he did. Nice. So what we noticed is that whether we were together or whether we weren't together, that he sort of came alive, and he smiled. He didn't really talk to us because we were always, just doing a lap or two, going around the block before going back in. And so one day I was walking by, and he said, "Would you stop for just a minute?" And I said, "Sure." I was really surprised. I was surprised he said anything, much less stop. And so I said, "Sure." I said, "What's up?" And he said, "I just want to know about you and your friend." Well, what would you like to know? Why are you always so happy? You always smile. You always smile at me. Why would you smile at me? Well, you're there, for one thing. And but it was a question that made me think, am I smiling for him? Or am I smiling for me because it's who I am? And I realized I'm smiling because that's who I am. That's how I connect. That's how I bond with the Christ in others. So we had a little bit of a talk about that, and I went on and shared that with my coworker, and so that was good. A couple of days later, she said, "Wow, you remember that guy?" "Yes, I do." She said, "He asked me to spend a few minutes with him, and I asked him to tell me his story." And his story was that the very first day that we saw him, he was homeless. He was sitting on a planter in front of a restaurant. That became his place. And he thought that he had lost everything, that there was really no chance for him to get his life back, to be who he thought he wanted to be who he really was and didn't know it. He was actually considering taking his life that day, and we didn't know that. What that said to me is just what this song says, that who we are is a blessing to the world. He gave me life. He gave me spirit. I looked for him every day that I went out. I looked for him, and he had the most dazzling, amazing smile that you could imagine. For such a long time, we had no discussion. We just smiled, and we communicated through that smile. Well, after that, thinking about service, what is service? Is service something I take time to do? Is service something I schedule and I will only do it then? No, it's really not. And every single one of us gives service in some way. It might be that someone is walking in front of you down the street and they drop something, and you notice that, and you say, "Oh, excuse me, you dropped this." Simple. But would we walk by it? No, because that's not who we are. It's not who we are. Service might be just smiling. It might be, "Oh, here, let me help you with that." It might be just showing up for someone. That is the glory of who we are. That's the glory of our divine nature. That we have the capacity to do that. That we have the capacity to look and feel beyond who we are and who we think we are, the way we show up in the world. Sometimes we think we're one thing and we're really not. But we're always, always divine. I wanted to share just a brief story. You may already know this. This is about Brother Lawrence. Brother Lawrence was a monk in the 15 or 1600s. He was in a French monastery, and his job was to run the kitchen. So that's what he did. He ran the kitchen. And he did it in a very conscious way, an intentional way, where everything he did, he felt, was to praise God, was to stay in prayer and connection with God. For him, there was no difference between prayer time and work time, because all of it was an activity of connection. All of it was an activity of what he called practicing the presence of God. And that's what he did. We have so much to learn from people that have gone on before us. And he is one of them. He is one of them. I'm looking around here. We're going to be hearing from several speakers today. And as you might guess, they are busy doing service. And so Shirley, I'm looking at you. And so we're going to change our order just a little bit. And so Shirley, if you could start walking over here while I tell people about how I met you. Come on up. 2 weeks ago, I went up where Jan is now. I went up to learn about PowerPoint, because there are always angels that are up there by themselves running the PowerPoint that you see on the screen here. Well, Shirley was working that day, Shirley was working that day, and she was just great. I thought I was going to be, doing a ride-along, just watching her. And about halfway through, she said, well, you sit down. You're going to do this. The only way you're going to learn is if you do it. Okay, yeah. And then I'm sure that while I was trying to figure out what to do and what to look at and where to see things, I think she was dancing behind me. I'm pretty sure. Were you?
More than likely.
Yeah.
More than likely.
And when we were all finished, I said, why do you do this? What do you do? She said, well, it's service. I do it because it's service. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And why do you serve? I asked. And she said, because I am.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Kathleen Marie. She has the most beautiful spirit that I've met in a long time. And if I didn't know any better, I would think that she went in my purse and got some of the stuff that I had to say this morning out of it. Because everything is blending so well together. I am Shirley. And when you mentioned that we are here because we have ancestors who have gone on before us, and so I'll introduce myself as Shirley, whose parents are Norwood and Norvella, whose grandparents are Hattie and Norwood and Charlie, and Esther Pauline Watts and Mary Terry Watts, and Craig Thomas Watts. And I could name some more, but I'm sure that they are proud to know that I still have them in my heart. And what I want to say this morning is, how can you turn someone down like Kathleen Marie when she asks you, would you please come to do something for this sacred service? And you can't say no because she used the word sacred. And so I said, oh my God, I can't say no, I won't do it. I have to say what Spirit tells me to say when you hear certain words being uttered that are words of His that she uses quite a bit. So when I looked up the word sacred, for sure, it says holy and blessed and consecrated and hallowed and revered and sanctified. And you used the word divine a minute ago, so that's why I say it seems as if she peeked on my paper to see what I had already written. Why do I serve? I serve because I want to grow spiritually. And we must know that it isn't automatic. It takes an intentional commitment to do that. You must want to grow. You must decide to grow. You must make an effort to grow, and you must persist in growing. The process of becoming like Christ always begins with a decision. I am here to serve because I must thank, I must serve, and I must honor the great Creator who breathed the breath of life in me, and I became a living soul. How can you not serve someone who has served you like that? It's almost difficult to speak after that, because serving makes you notice that it is absolutely necessary for your spirit to be connected to the Holy Spirit when you serve, because of what He has done for us. I remember when she said 3 to 4 minutes, so I'm not quite on 4 minutes yet. I remember when I started college as a freshman, we had some classes that are called required courses. And one of those classes was called the humanities class. I had no idea what it was. I had no idea how it would serve me. But I noticed when I walked into the room, over the door or maybe on the wall, I can't quite remember yet, but there was a motto there. And Dr. Alexander told us that we would have to memorize that motto by reading it every day, every night, whenever we could, to remember what that motto stood for and what it said. We had to recognize it and be able to quote it after the class of humanities. And so at the end of the class, that motto says, I'm getting it together here. The end of education is to know God and the laws and purposes of his universe, and to reconcile one's life to these laws. And that was very powerful when we walked in the door, but I didn't know that. But after we walked out of that class, I realized that that fifth principle that you asked me about, and she says, Reverend Kathleen Marie says, if you would like to intertwine the fifth principle, you may do so. And so if you noticed at the end of that particular quote that I just read, it said about reconcile one's life to these laws. And then this principle falls right in. Knowing and understanding the laws of life, also called truth, is not enough. A person must also live the truth that he or she knows. And if we know anything at all about biblical characters, we know about the one called David. And from Acts 13:36, it says, for David served the purpose of God in his own generation. And so you and I can't be David, but I can be Shirley, Kathleen Marie. So the scripture goes, for David served the purpose of God in his own generation. And so I am going to end with that. But I want you to say it, but put your name there. For Shirley serves the purpose of God in her own generation. Let's do it together now using your name. For Shirley serves the purpose of God in her own generation. Thank you.
Wow. Wow. We get to a certain point where we know that, that serving, however we choose to do it, is going to be our path to growth, as Shirley said. Rabindranath Tagore said, I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted, and behold, service was joy. That's part of that learning. That's part of the growing edge that we have, the blessing that we get to be and that we get to share with others. Tagore lived 1860 to 1940-ish, right in there, about 80 years, and had such a tremendous understanding of who he was, what he was here for, and what service was. And so that's how he followed that through. His service was in writing. His service was in writing poetry. His service was in speaking. He won a Nobel Prize for literature because he connected what he did with who he was. Like Shirley. Yeah. So there's a story. It's an old Zen story that you may have heard before, but I'm going to share it again. Word had spread throughout a region that there was a tremendous, wonderful, spirited, holy man who had moved into the region and lived on top of a hill. There was a man from down in the village who decided that he needed to know who that holy man was and what he was about, what made him holy. And so he determined to go up the hill, to take that trip. It was long, it was arduous, and it was a rugged climb. But he went, and he did, and he found the house at the top of the hill, and he knocked on the door, saw through the window that there was a servant or someone that was in there, a housekeeper. And when the housekeeper, opened the door, the man from the village said, I came to find the holy man. Is he here? I'd like to speak with him. And the fellow that was inside said, come with me. So the man went through, he followed him. They walked through the house, they walked through one room and then another. The man from town kept looking around as he was walking, saying, is he in this room? Is he in this room? Where is he going to be? Where am I going to see him? He was really anticipating getting to see the holy man. And then he looked up and realized that the house servant had taken him all the way through the house and to the back door. The door was open. He was being ushered out, and that was it. And he said, well, wait a minute. I came to find the holy man. And the servant said, you did. You found him. Now, as you go out into the world, know that no matter who you see and who you think they are the holy. They are the holy. Take that with you. He instructed him, take that with you and know that all of your problems will be solved. All of your own divine nature will be revealed once you can be open to the divinity in another. So that is what we do, that is what we learn. If we take a look at not what the robe is, there was one monk one time who, I'm an interfaith minister, can you tell? So I love the stories. I love the stories because I think they're so enlightening and instructive. He always had good service. People always took good care of him. And then he went out into the community and found out and watched as he was being taken care of and the community was not. So he went back inside. They brought the food. He took off his robe. He folded it up, set it on the seat, and he said, that food is for the robe. I'm going to go eat with the others. This is who we are. This is our divine nature. We know that we are all part of the same whole. Charles, do you want to come up? We have one speaker who couldn't make it apparently, so I'm changing things up a little bit. You're still behind Shirley, so that's a good thing. And while you come down, I want to tell people a little bit about Charles. I first came here September last year, and Charles was the person who greeted me with a radiant love and smile. Come around so everybody can see you. And he was always there. He was always at the door greeting. He always had something kind to say to everyone, And so walking in the door then became joy. Because your peace, your love, your joy became mine. You shared that. And so I just, he tells me he's blushing, I don't think so. He's been a blessing for me, and I'm sure that he has been for you as well. One of the things that I've learned about Charles over time, because we've had little snatches of time to visit, is what he does in his life when he's not here. And I'll just leave that for you to tell them.
Good morning. What she's speaking about, I'm active in the community. I'm a volunteer for Youth Friends. I go into the public schools and I talk with the children. I really love them. I had an incident that occurred last year, a couple years ago. I was at Johnson Elementary School and I was mentoring a fifth grader. And this young man had a challenge with one of his female students. And he said, Mr. Ingram, he said, can we bring her into our session? And I laughed under my breath. And I said, well, you got to ask your teacher. You have to get the information from her, permission from her. So he did. And the young lady came into the group and they made friends. And that was a successful story about how young people are. I still go into schools now. I work part-time in a center school district, and I like to work with the younger kids. That's one of the things that brought me out here to Kansas City from Detroit. And I was under the tutelage of the late David Williamson. out of Detroit. He's a great minister. And he kept me busy. I mean, really busy. I was there 7 days a week sometimes, doing things, working with the youth. And I do the same thing here. We've had many programs here for youth, and I try to be involved with that. One year, when it was 9/11, they had a big group of kids from all over the country. And this young man from Kenya was in my home for about a week or two. And we bonded together. It was a great experience, real good experience. On 9/11, we were in the barbershop getting him a haircut so he can go back to Kenya. And all of this happened. We sit in the barbershop, and he was just really frightened, and I was too. But we worked it out. We really a good young man, nice young man. We still stay in contact with one another. And I've come into Unity through the late David Williamson, as I said before. And I'm active with the Men of Unity, and just really enjoying myself, enjoying the people. And I'm glad my voice held up today. I have a challenge with thyroid, so I'm kind of careful about what I say.
We couldn't tell.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Beautiful. Thank you. There are so many of us that find ways to give. He found in the work that he was doing that he was giving and he was making a difference. He wasn't there 7 days a week because that was being demanded of him. He was there 7 days a week because he cared and he gave that part of himself that couldn't be given by anyone else. Awesome. Chris, if you're here. Chris, I would love to see you. Or Carl. Okay. Carl. Here's our first speaker. Greetings. Greetings to you. Carl has been busy this morning with the children. He's a YOU sponsor. He's a member of the board. He's the person that whenever there's a question around here, someone says, call Carl. Yeah. So I honor you and appreciate you coming to share your story today.
Thank you. Good morning. Everybody okay? I'm nervous. 5 minutes, okay? 90 seconds, so it's going to go quick. Volunteer. Just giving them time, giving them talent, giving of myself. Nothing greater. Michael Murdoch said several years ago, I was in Gainesville, Georgia, and he said, don't give till it hurts, give till it feels good. Give till it feels good. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And no matter what he's doing it with heart. And God, I just appreciate him so much. And Chris, thank you for coming and sharing. You're going to be the final person, and with a bit of a different perspective. And sure. I appreciate you. Thank you.
Good morning, y'all. Judy and I came out here about 10 or 11 years ago. And the way we first stepped into service was just meeting and greeting and ushering at the door. And the more we spent time and found ways just to step into service, which I think for both of us, when we were new to this family and this community, was an act of faith. We were stepping out in blind faith. But we were so warmly received, not only by the community, but because of that, whatever happens inside, you know, when you give, you get something back, right? You open your hand and it's filled with something. And we found it filled in many different ways. And I found different things to get involved in here and really kind of found some of the underlines and underworkings of what actually goes on to create the service. And I've enjoyed all of them. And because I get bored so quickly sometimes, I find something else to do. And there's lots of things to do, and I've actually found joy in every one, and it's because this place means so much, and it was long ago just taking that first step to step out in faith, and was so warmly received and been rewarded twice, 3 times, 4 times over for anything that we've put into this community. We've pressed down and returned. So it's a family. It's service and it's faith. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for what you do.
Family, service, faith. Those were the 3 words that he ended with, and it's so true. There's a connection and a bond when you understand, when you know who's going to be doing what, and you notice if they're there or not there, if they need help or don't need help. There's a whole different world when you are connected in that way. And I would add really quickly, when you can be involved in that way, because we can't always be. I remember having children at home, barely making it to church, and I only did that for my daughter, and the last thing I could have done was make a commitment at that time to do something else, to be anywhere on a regular basis. It wasn't something I could do. But what I could do was to shine my own light right where I was, whether that was in church or not in church, and so that's what I did. At first I felt like that was the booby prize, but I realized that's also the best. The best that someone can offer is to be who you are in the present moment. So I just want to leave you with a couple of things, although Chris did a great job. Yes, we are a family, we are a community, and in a community, in a family, things revolve, they circulate. They circulate. We give and we receive, and we always receive more than we give. So I just invite you to take a look, to be aware as you go through this week about what it is that's going on inside of you. When you think to yourself, well, that's something I could do, recognize that that is your divine nature that's giving you that information. That it is that part of you that is made entirely of love and that generates love, that is noticing and telling you. That is the main thing. Take a look at who you are, know that you are divine, and bless that part of you. And know we're all right here to share and to appreciate that with you. You are love, and I bless you. The divine in me sees and blesses the divine in you. Thank you.